Welcome to this episode of Insights with Ovationz. I am your host, Aaron Ellis. I am joined today by Chris Eversley. Now, Chris is a former professional basketball player and now business owner, a speaker, and an educator. He has a passion for empowering people to be the best versions of themselves. With his company, Ovationz Solutions, he works with collegiate and professional level athletes, providing them with a holistic approach to their transition into life after sports. Now, I'm going to stop there and just say welcome, Chris.
Appreciate it, Aaron. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to everybody that's tuning in out there.
Yeah, so let's dive in. I always love to bridge the personal and the professional and the past and the present, right? And where you're headed. So what led you to what you're doing now? What led you to basically wanting to bring a holistic approach to people transitioning from one high level achievement to the next iteration of their passion, we could say? What led to that?
It was honestly just from experience. It was something that I had at the time when I retired. I'd played competitive basketball for over 2 decades. And I realized, when you go through so many different phases of your life, but, you have one constant identity throughout that time, and especially over 2 decades, right? So, you're in high school, you're in college, high level, and then you go to pros. You are a basketball player. And that was something that my parents always made sure that I knew. It was like, no, you play basketball, but basketball isn't you, right? So that was something that I was very fortunate enough to have from the jump in terms of, oh, this is just a part of my identity. It's not who I am. However, a lot of my teammates over the years, it was everything to them and it was their identity. So as people started to retire, as I had older teammates who either when they were seniors in college, they were done, or older guys overseas, they got to that fork in the road where they knew it was time to retire, but they didn't know who they were outside of their sport. So when I talk about creating Ovationz Solutions, it was just something that I not only experienced myself, but I just realized that there was a glaring need for athletes out there who need help, from a holistic standpoint. And, whether it's financial, whether it's educational, whether it's just conversation, whether it's mental health, like these are all aspects of my company that I feel as though athletes need to transition smoothly into the next chapter.
Yeah. So you said something that actually just shocked me. You said you had parents that taught you that you weren't what you did. It was just something you did.
Yes.
Really, like literally, you had parents that actually guided you to that.
This is true. It's very fortunate on that regard too. So a little information about my parents. My mom actually played for Long Beach State back in the day when they were a perennial NCAA tournament team, Sweet 16, Final Four every single year, in a stacked conference with USC. So Cheryl Miller's, and Donovan's, like all those people back in the day. And then my dad actually played at Chicago State and then was drafted by the Bulls. And he played there for a preseason, got injured, rehabbed, and then went overseas to play in Sweden for 7 years. So I was very fortunate enough to have the athlete mentality from a very young age, because they both knew, A, I was going to be tall. Secondly, and B, they knew I was probably going to play basketball because it would be tough to be a 6'7" accountant. But no shade to those out there. But they knew once the genes kicked in that I would choose the right decision, and I did. And luckily, until my retirement, I had them there because I'm very big on getting and giving advice from experience. So people who've walked in my shoes or, have experienced things that I've experienced, I'm always going to listen to them a little bit more because that's just what I vibe towards. And that's what served me well up until this point.
Wow. So this is really cool. This is a different conversation that I've ever had around this stuff, because most people, when I've talked to somebody who's achieved high in sports, right, they've literally been in that upper 1 to 3 percentile, right? They ate, slept, and breathed the sport. And their parents, a lot of times, part of that identity that was created was the parent actually trying to live through the child. Yep. And so there was an extra level of identity in there that was hard to walk away from. So my question to you is, we talked about this a little bit before we hit record, but did you have any sort of false identity that caused you to have any kind of mental crash, that caused you to have any kind of an identity crisis, or it doesn't sound like it was as traumatic as, you and I have experienced in working with other athletes, but did you have any of that?
No, not really. I mean, honestly, the foundation in my household was always, hey, look, we're going to empower you to make the right decisions. As I mentioned before, my family and I are huge advocates of giving everybody the rules and letting them decide if they want to play the game. So they did the same thing with me. So as a kid, I played every single sport just to keep me busy. I didn't grow up in the best of neighborhoods, so that was a kind of a reaction to that to keep me out of trouble. So, everything from soccer to bowling. And then when AAU started for basketball, traveling to Minnesota, traveling to Ohio, Vegas, like all around the country, it was something that essentially kept me so busy that I would not even have a problem falling into the wrong hands on the south side of Chicago growing up. So,
Right.
my parents are very, very, I'm grateful to them both because they made sure that, hey, look, they put me on the bowling lanes and one took one bumper, the other took the other, and was like, no, you're going straight. So it's a matter of how fast you're going to get to the pins, but you're going to get to the pins.
Wow. I absolutely love that. That's such a blessing that you grew up with that. Like most people, like I said, I would say everybody I've talked to usually has a double identity crisis. And I say double because they have their own, but then they also have the parent that tried to live through the child, right? So it's pretty amazing. Now, how are you working through that with others that you work with, though? Because I would assume that some of your clients and people you work with do have that identity crisis, do have that, like, what am I going to do? Who am I now if I'm not a basketball player, if I'm not an athlete? What are you doing? What do you do to help them work through that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like my process is very simple. I'm very big on people relationships. I've worked in tech sales, I've worked in tech, I've worked in a nonprofit. I've always loved dealing with people and I've always been big on building community. So, every approach that I take with any sort of client is like, hey, look, when you talk to me or when you reach out to me, I want to get to know you as a person first. A, because that lets me know your story. And B, that lets me know if this relationship is going to work. I've had people approach me for overtime solutions and they're like, hey, Chris, I want to do your services. However, they did not pass the consultation because it just wouldn't be a good fit based on
Yeah.
a variety of factors. And I would be doing myself a disservice and you a disservice as a client if I'm going to just go into this relationship trying to make money. Like, no, I want to make you a better human being. And kind of going into one of my foundational principles of just life in general outside of business is making sure that based on my experiences, my life motto, and I've said this on LinkedIn, I've said this in speaking engagements before, is I want to be able to get into the house party and then open up the window to let other people in and have a great time and learn and kind of like do these different things, right? So I'm at the point in my life now, especially as a business owner, and being able to work with NCAA universities and pro athletes, where I've been able to get into the house party with my knowledge, the background in finance, the background in tech, the background in nonprofit. I've been very fortunate enough to not only have a stable household growing up, but now I've coupled that with the experience of a collegiate and professional athlete. And now I have the business acumen. So now it's like, okay, Chris, you have all of these infinity stones. What good is it if you just keep them to yourself? Right. Wow. So that's my entire approach of, hey, look, I've acquired a lot of knowledge, but what good is it just in a eulogy in 70 years, as opposed to empowering people to be able to do what they want to do to maximize their lives? And then even at the corporation level, like, how can we make you more efficient? How can we make sure your leadership team is actually empowering people so that they're not walking around feeling like they're on eggshells every single day? So then you get into the complexities of the human psyche in the workplace and how much you're losing on ROI and lost productivity. I can go down a rabbit hole on that. I won't do that now. But I just think that it's very important to understand where people are, meet them where they're at, and just realize that every day it's like a relationship. Not every day is going to be 50-50. And, as a service provider and somebody that I love to be able to be for people, I just make sure that's who I am at the end of every day.
So I want to touch on something that some dots that I just connected that I see. I really look at things from a level of what I would call integrity or congruence. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that in a basic term is that when somebody, what they say, what they do, and what they think is all speaking the same message to the world. Okay. Now, when we tie this into working with people who've had an identity in one thing and they go through a little bit of identity crisis, they're trying to find the next iteration of their identity, the next thing they're going to go do. A lot of times they end up doing things out of desperation, out of survival, without actually aligning what they're doing from the inside. They're doing it for, I'm not going to say the wrong reasons, but they're doing it for reasons that aren't necessarily going to lead to the fulfillment that they think it will, right? Yeah. What you just said, which I think is massively a sign of your structural integrity, like what I said, thinking, doing, and saying the same things, that you'll have people come to you and want to work with you, but they don't pass the consultancy test. Like you can just tell they're not going to be a good match, which I'm not going to just do it just to make money. To me, that is so huge. And knowing that you know that within yourself, to me, I want to showcase that here, because anybody who's listening and wants to work with you, that is a key factor that they need to understand, that if you know that within you, and that has the structural integrity in what you do, you're going to teach that as well.
Yep.
So I'm saying that, I know I'm going a long way to say what I'm going to say. To me, it shows that what you're going to do with them is going to lead them to success and fulfillment, not just making money, not just getting a paycheck, right?
Yep.
Which I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I had to say that because I think that is such a valuable blessing that you said that. Like, I always look for that structural integrity in things. And like, again, what they do and what they think is the same message. Because that's when you know somebody's going to really be powerful and they're going to really change the world, right?
That is true.
It was more of a, wow, I got to tell him this.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. Thank you. It's years of just, again, living a life that, waking up every single morning and realizing that as long as I move ethically and morally to who I am as a person, the better version of myself I can be for other people. So, when people come into the program, I've had, again, NCAA student athletes, I've had professional athletes. And again, not everybody passes that original litmus test, but at the same time, when you do, you're not only getting your curriculum, you're not only getting mental health services, you're not only getting financial advice, you're getting mentorship as well. Because again, like I said, I've been able to learn a lot, but what good is that if I'm holding on to it? So I have a client now who I'm literally helping with. It's almost kind of like life coaching, right? They're at a crossroads in their life. Hey, I have a super clear future one way, the other one's a little bit gray, but it kind of like realizing like, hey, look, here are all the rules on this side, here's all the rules on this side. I've actually lived both of these. So let me help you not as a service provider, but as a person. And that's, again, like, I don't charge for life coaching. I don't charge for mentorship, but no, it just comes with me wanting to help people at a genuine level. And that's something that I think it's served me well. And again, waking up every day and just doing good by people has served me well. And it's provided me with opportunities to meet great people like yourself, to work with organizations like Ovationz and potentially organizations out there in the future.
Which is reference to the fact that you bring a holistic approach.
Yes.
There's all those that you have to, and I get that you have to, right? That's it. I love that. I love that you just shared that. Now, there's a couple other things that came to mind as we were talking. I'm curious on if you have any experience in this or any thoughts on these two aspects. One is the whole, and it's totally shifting in the world, I think, in a positive way. But the diversity, equity, inclusion movement and whatnot. And I'm curious if you've encountered this. I have worked with some people who have transitioned out of playing at a high level in sports, and then they're going into a job, and they're finding obstacles in progressing in their work, that their level of execution and drive and all those skill sets that make them a high achiever aren't being looked at. Yep. Or they're being overlooked because of the diversity, equity, inclusion laws. So where I'm getting at with this is like, have you experienced that at all, or do you have any thoughts on? And the way somebody asked me this, I don't know, a couple months ago was, is professional sports the last mediocrity? Is it mediocrity? No, meritocracy.
Meritocracy.
Right? Because in sports, if you can't perform, you're not going to make the team. You're going to get cut. Right? It's not a matter of. And then on the other side of that, I've had people like professional athletes that I've worked with that, like, we get into that locker room, and there's a guy from Idaho and there's a guy from here. We're all different colors of skin, background and stuff, but we're all family immediately. Nobody even sees that stuff. Yep. Right? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, on how that's happened in the workplace, and if you've had any challenges with people who are high achievers but are being hindered because of that. Like I said, I think it's changing for the better. But I'm just curious on if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I see it a lot, actually. I mean, in working with organizations, I think that it's something that is, the term I would probably want to use is unconscious bias. I would choose to wholeheartedly believe that nobody's out here actively hindering people's success. However, the one thing that comes to mind when we talk about DEIB, that I personally have a strong advocacy for, is women in the workplace. For long, and this is since, industrial studies have been done, women have had that glass ceiling. And, now you're starting to see, like, and again, it still exists. I'm not trying to in any way, shape or form say that, women are, making closer to amount on a dollar for men, because those barriers do still exist. However, I am seeing more women in C-suite positions. I actually read a study not too long ago in which it says, like, hey, it basically built the narrative of why your C-suite needs a female athlete or a former female athlete. And that's something that I think it speaks to some of the tendencies that athletes have, both men and women. We do have the things, we do have the intangibles to be able to lead people. I'm a huge advocate of the fact that, look, being an athlete, especially at a high level, it will give you everything you need to be successful in life. And you can go learn a hard skill. I can go learn Excel. I can go learn Google Workspace. I can go learn how to sell something, right? I can't learn how to build relationships. I can't learn how to do all these different things. So when I see some of these DEIB narratives, it's mainly something that I think is, again, it's getting better. It is a very long way from being, the word I want to use is equitable, right?
Yeah, it's a long way. Yeah.
Exactly. It is a long way, but I think, there are initiatives in place where it's not just because the government's backing an initiative, right? Or, there's certain people or certain metrics to hit, or like EEOE data or whatever. I do think that there's a foundational shift happening towards people of all races just being like, hey, look, let me just hire the best person for the job. Right. Yeah. Now, on the flip side of that, like, obviously you can go back down the spiral and just say, look, like, okay, certain people have different, they have more opportunities from the start, but I feel as though there are more opportunities out there because people aren't being silent about it anymore. People are speaking up in the age of social media. People are on TikTok, people are on Instagram speaking about their experiences. People are utilizing Glassdoor, like these types of things. So I'm hoping that continues to grow in the right direction. So again, in a couple of years, we've made at least another couple of strides towards the future we all want to see.
Yeah. And honestly, I literally just share whatever arises, but what I'm learning about you, I love that you're on the forefront of this. I love that you're doing leadership training. I love it because you have that integrity, right? You're not coming at it from I can see you're coming from a holistic and a very positive. I don't like to use the word positive and negative because it's so subjective, but you're coming from a very holistic perspective. So other thing that popped in my head too, as we were talking, I'm curious on your thoughts on this, and if it has it, I don't know how long you've been doing what you've been doing, working with athletes and stuff, but has it caused any problems in the transition period? And what I'm speaking towards is the new NIL deals that they're allowing at the collegiate level. Is that causing more of an identity issue? Is that causing more of a crisis and transition issue? Or not? Or your thoughts on it in general too?
Yeah, I would say the NIL stuff, again, being a former college athlete, I mean, I would have loved to have been paid. But at the same time, in speaking in sports generational terms, I'm glad my descendants are getting paid, right? Because we know how much money is being made off of them. But I think something that it's been glaring is, I wouldn't say it necessarily poses an issue. I do think when you unleash something that is or has become NIL, the first year was kind of just like a very like, okay, let's let this happen. But it's kind of the wild, wild west. But now, like, as of January 11th of this year, there's been a little bit more restriction put on it in terms of like, okay, we need to regulate these things. There's certain financial metrics. Okay, if you make over this amount of money, you have to report it to this committee and that type of stuff. So the regulation is great. Now, in terms of how my company interacts with that, it's actually very simple in terms of what I do. When I worked with my first cohort of collegiate athletes, it was a very simple, hey, look, I am starting this company. I want to help prepare you for life after sport. And it's very simple. Hey, look, we're going to document all of this. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to get the entire curriculum. In exchange, all I want is social media posts. Again, I'm not trying to charge. I have a very foundational core issue with charging student athletes directly. As a college athlete, hey, any money that you are earning in NIL, you've earned that. That is your name, that is your image, that is your likeness. I want no parts of that. You've earned that. And I'm, as a service provider, that's not for me. However, what I do tell the university is like, hey, these are young people that you're investing in. These are young people that are essentially making your university money. And especially as you go up in March Madness times, a lot of money, right? So you should invest in this program to empower them. So the NIL is just, it makes it smooth because, again, I can sign college athletes to NIL deals, not charge them a dime, but empower them for their future. And in turn, they go back and tell their friends, they tell their universities. And that's the traction that I've been able to get now at the universities. I was like, oh no, like Chris is solid. Like we have reviews on the website. Like, no, we love what Chris does. Now let's get Chris in and work with our athletic department. I'm doing work at the conference level as well. I speak in conference engagements all of my curriculum is being disseminated to the conference level and all of that stuff over the next few months. So it's just a very exciting time to be not only in this position, but to realize that there are, hundreds of thousands of people out there who have this identity crisis, who are at this fork in the road. And Overtime Solutions is here for you. You don't have to go through it alone.
I love that, man. We're at time here, but as I always want to know, is there any final thought, anything you really want to make sure that you share with the audience before we say goodbye today?
No, just if anything, feel free to reach out. I'm always willing to help. I'm always willing to make connections. I make tons of connections a day and don't expect a dime. I just want people to maximize their time on earth. We don't get much of it. So I want you to be able to put yourself in a position for success. And if I can be of service, whether it's through Overtime Solutions, whether it's through my personal brand and working with, like some of my leadership stuff, I mean, I'd love to be a part of whatever you have going on. And yeah, that's pretty much about it.
Man, Chris, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your time today and sharing your insights and your wisdom today. I love the level we connected on, and I always recommend people go back and listen to this again in context of everything we talked about, even with my recommendation of going back and listening. We went all over the place. And I know you and I can see the through line, but some people are like, what did they talk about? So I want to say thank you. Obviously, thank you for being here today.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Aaron, for the opportunity. Shout out to Ovationz and, everybody that's involved with this right now. And looking forward to just, again, whether it's myself or other people on the platform, I'm just looking to get out there and be a part of something special to really help people maximize their time, organizations maximize everything, their resources, all of the things that kind of go into, even from a financial standpoint, but the human psyche, psych business. Really just want to see what's best for the world and, not be selfish about it.
Man, I love it. Guys, you have been on another episode of Insights with Ovationz. This has been Aaron Ellis and Chris Eversley. Watch for more from Chris. I guarantee that I'm going to be looping him into a lot of things Ovationz going forward. You can find him at ovationz.com, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you.